All right, what video are we doing today? Where did you come from?
I've been here the whole time.
SULE! Hidden deep within the Rosharan system's astronomy lie some ominous clues to the dark truths about the origin of Roshar itself. Something big happened to the planet before the shattering, and it may even involve a fourth shard of Adonalsium. We're going to be spoiling the entire first arc of the Storyline Archive, so please stop here if you haven't read through Wind and Truth. Before we start off, I want to address the elephant in the room. It's no secret that Wind and Truth fell flat for a lot of Sander fans. The ending was controversial, and some of the arcs were undeniably bland, but I want us to forget all of that for a moment. One of the most important things to remember here is that this isn't the end of the journey. The reason Zach and I started Lightcallers in the first place wasn't for the love of one book, but for the love we both share for the entire Cosmere. This massive universe full of incredible characters is a beautiful thing, and one novel doesn't change any of that for us. In fact, we both really enjoyed Wind and Truth. Whether you hated the novel, or maybe you were unimpressed by some of the arcs, maybe you even loved it all, I think it's important for us to remember that we still have a lot of journey left in this universe, especially on Roshar. Wind and Truth opened up the doors to some crazy cool things, and we are as excited as ever to theorize on them. We have 5 more novels in the Stormlight Archive, and things are just starting to heat up. So buckle up, SULE. If today's theory holds any weight, then Wind and Truth may just be the most important book for the Cosmere to date. Okay, if you're still with me, then let's dive into the theory. In Arcanum Unbounded, we were given our first look at the Rosharan star system through its official star chart. When looking at the chart, we see the 3 habitable planets, Ashen, Braze, and Roshar, the 10 gas giants past the asteroid belt, and a white sun at the center. Beyond these major celestial bodies, we also see Roshar's legendary 3 moons, Mishim, Nomen, and Salas. The moons are an iconic part of the evening sky in Roshar due to their low orbits, and they even have legends made about them. One of these even tries to explain the Nat and skin tone. Some Rosharans, like the Shin, even consider the 3 moons to be semi-divine beings, not just celestial bodies. Because of these deific connections, many in the community have theorized a connection between the 3 revered moons and the 3 shards residing on Roshar. Mishim, the green moon, could correlate to cultivation, Nomen, the pale blue moon, to honor, and Salas, the purple moon, to odium, though I'd be more convinced if it was a burning gold. The color connection was confirmed to be meaningless in the 2017 words of Brandon, but you get my point. There's a lot to unpack here, but Wind and Truth proved that this connection cannot be true. I'll explain that in a bit. Another thing that Wind and Truth gave us, though, was the news that Roshar once had a 4th moon, a revelation that even amazed a god. If you recall, the stone is one of the 3 ancient spren of Roshar. These were revealed to us by the sibling in chapter 21 of Wind and Truth. The sibling describes how it became like the stone's legacy, much like the Stormfather did for the wind and the Night Watcher for the night. In chapter 60 of Wind and Truth, the ancient stone implores Venli to go to Narak, the center of the Shattered Plains. Venli learns that this place, long ago, was destroyed by Honor. The stone then calls out the new gods for not understanding this place, including the strange alien stone that fell from the dead 4th moon before they arrived. Because of this, we know that the stone likely predates even the Shattering, as Honor would have had to arrive after the fallen moon. With this newfound knowledge of a previously existing 4th moon, could we reasonably assume that there could be a 4th god on Roshar? The stone refers to the 4th moon as dead, which is an interesting choice of words. The specific personification of the 4th moon leaves me wondering why it was spoken of in that way. Let's look at some more evidence. Now I want to jump back to the beginning of Venli's section in chapter 60. Here we learn that chasm fiends can sing. This is made even more interesting when we learn that the creatures bellow in 4 tones at once, singing in the ancient tones of the planet. Now Venli speculates that these might be the ancient tones of the gods themselves, but she's confused since there are only 3 gods, not 4. You see, we've seen many people online connecting this idea to the 3 shards of Adonalsium currently residing on Roshar. This isn't a bad line of thinking, and that may still be true, but let's remember what these tones are. These are the ancient tones of Roshar, not the new tones of the shards, and I can prove it. In chapter 100 of Wind and Truth, Tanavast arrives at the Rosharan system, and he is amazed at the beautiful equations and mathematics of his creation. When he goes to the planet Roshar itself, he says, and I quote, "It sings to me through its tones and rhythms." These ancient tones clearly predate Tanavast's arrival. Now in that same chapter, Tanavast meets the 3 ancient spren of Roshar, calling them 3 powerful incarnations who had his voice. These 3 spren share the voice of Adonalsium himself. Tanavast then goes on to sing with the wind, bringing their 2 unique tones together. If these ancient spren are the ones singing to Tanavast all the way back then, could these also be the spren responsible for the ancient tones of the planet? If so, then as Venli asked, why are there 4 tones? In addition, when we see Venli use her stone shaping here, she allows the tones of the chasm fiends to shape the stone. The resulting shape was a perfect representation of the shattered plains. Coincidence? I think not! Let's move on from Venli for a moment and discuss all of this from Tanavast's perspective. In chapter 120, we see Tanavast and Odium's first clash from Honor's point of view. Now, the first major revelation to note here is that their clash creates anti-light. As the shockwave runs across Nat-Natin, destroying the city, Honor is horrified to find that something strange in the land is causing this effect to worsen. This is the same strange alien stone Venli was told about in chapter 60. Honor immediately identified it as splinters of a fourth moon, something he was unaware of had existed up to this point. We also find out that this alien metal was able to shelter ancient creatures that we assume to be the sleepless from Honor's eyes. The god went as far as to call the metal something greater than aluminum, the metal known for blocking investiture. Now, right off the bat, it's easy to speculate that this could be a god metal from a shard of Adonalsium. Now, this could be true, and it does seem to at least share some similarities with Trellium, but I really don't think it's connected to a shard. Remember, when Honor arrived at Roshar, there were only 3 moons. He didn't even know the fourth existed. Now, it's possible that Honor wasn't the first to arrive at Roshar, but there's nothing to indicate that there was a shard there before him. Because of this, that fourth moon would likely have to have splintered before the shattering of Adonalsium. Now, if that's the case, this metal would have investiture from Adonalsium himself, not a shard of him as many have predicted. This isn't far-fetched, as we know another planet in the same exact system that has an invested metal core. Braze. Unlike this fourth moon that seems to hide investiture, the metal of Braze's core seems to attract investiture, as we see Honor comments about in chapter 100. Now, if we go back to chapter 120, as this alien metal reacted to Honor and Odium's anti-light, it formed a pattern that we now recognize as the shattered plains, liquefying the grounds and forming the chasms. Remember, this same pattern resonated from the Chasm Fiend songs. There is obviously a clear connection between this lunar metal and the Chasm Fiend tones. Now, we're cooking up some crazy theories about this god metal coming soon, but that's not our main focus for today. Let's actually get into our theory. So first, let's state the facts we've laid out so far. Roshar seems to have 4 ancient tones, as stated by Venli in chapter 60. Roshar also once had 4 moons, but one was destroyed prior to Honor's arrival. There are currently only 3 moons, and 3 ancient spren who sing 3 of the ancient tones of Roshar. Have you pieced it together yet? Assuming these moons are in some way linked to the ancient spren of Roshar, then we believe that the splintering of the 4th moon coincided with the splintering of the 4th ancient spren of Roshar. All over this text, we get hints of the old gods of Roshar and their importance pre-shattering. We have the wind, the stone, the night, but don't those seem kind of random? Remember that Adonalsium made this system perfectly and mathematically. Tanavast puts it well in chapter 100, a celebration of the intimate relationship between song, numbers, and art. Now, with Adonalsium, there are always 2 numbers we know are very important: 16 for the 16 pieces of his godly intent, and 4 for the 4 dawn shards he used to create his worlds. The 4 dawn shards he used to create Roshar. We think that 4 is a good number to Adonalsium, where 3 doesn't make as much sense. We strongly believe that there was once a 4th god, a 4th ancient spren on Roshar, and something must have gone terribly wrong with it. So bad that the singers don't even remember. We think that there's way too much evidence for this not to be true. And to take it a little further, we also think we know who that god once was, because they left behind a remnant. Okay, remember chapter 120? Well, in that chapter, Tanavast describes how this alleged god metal reacts to him and Odium. To quote, "It was something greater, something that responded to our clash, the ground liquefying in a pattern dictated by the tone and the strange nature of the place." Okay, I think the use of the word liquefied here is very important. We believe that the ground liquefied in response to this metal because the 4th moon was connected to the 4th ancient spren of Roshar, water. Now, you may see this as a stretch, but before you click off this video, let me make our case. First, just look at Roshar. The entire planet is made up of stone and water. Not only that, but like Earth, there's far more water than land. If the 3 ancient spren are cognitive constructs representing the way people perceive the world around them, then wouldn't it make sense for the continent of massive oceans to have a god spren of the water? If that's not enough for you, we also have the splintering of the 4th moon. Yes, Tanavast was very specific when he called the 4th moon splintered. Like we see with the shards themselves, you cannot eliminate investiture, but you can splinter it. Now, if this moon was splintered and we see its power in the shattered plains in the form of this god metal, where else might we have seen it? Let's talk about the strangest spren on Roshar, Kusasesh. All the way back in Interlude 5 of the Way of Kings, we get a lot of detail on Kusasesh from none other than Axes the Collector. They called it by name, Kusasesh the Protector. Some worshipped it as a god. Most simply accepted it as part of the city. It was unique, one of the few types of spren he knew that seemed to only have a single member. Now, doesn't that sound extremely suspicious? Axes the Collector's entire purpose in life is to see every type of spren he can, even going as far as to harm and imprison himself to make unique spren appear. Now, if Roshar's leading expert on spren is calling Kusasesh unique, then we should probably pay attention. When Kusasesh appears, the spren stares in the direction of the origin, the place where many on Roshar speculate the high storms originate. Everything on Roshar, east of Shinovar, directs a wall of protection towards the origin, and it's widely believed that Stormlight, Honor's investiture, is most potent there. While on the topic of highly invested water, we learn in Wind and Truth that the Chasm Fiends get their investiture from the high storms and from Odium's perpendicularity. They pupate on the plane specifically so that they can absorb that investiture to grow beyond natural sizes. Now, the Chasm Fiends are large, but is it a coincidence that the largest great shells we are aware of live underwater? The Taina of the Reshi Isles and the Lancerin of Amia are the largest great shells we know of, and they spend a majority of their lives submerged in the oceans of Roshar. While the Taina could potentially get their size from the high storms and the sheer numbers of years being alive, it's far less likely for the Lancerin, considering the high storms would be nearly depleted of investiture by the time they hit Amia. The only way this really makes sense is if the Lancerin received their investiture from either the Dawn Shard on Amia, which we aren't sure is possible, or from a great source of investiture within the oceans themselves. Could Kusasesh be a splinter of the water? Could they be to the water what the Stormfather is to Honor? There's a precedent for it. Now, I think this theory stands solid on its own, but as many of you know, there is another major source of lore outside the novels, the dreaded words of Brandon. There are two that relate directly to Kusasesh, and I think they help confirm our theory even better. During Jordancon 2018, Brandon was asked about how old Kusasesh might be. Now, we don't get specifics, but Brandon does say that it was a while ago, and when asked further if it was 2,000 years old, he states that it wasn't a recent event. If 2,000 years is considered recent, then it's likely Kusasesh predates Honor's arrival. For our theory to work, Kusasesh would need to be as old or older than the Shattering, and this seems to line up. In a Jordancon 2016 Q&A, Brandon was asked if the giant water spren and the Night Watcher were on the same level as the Stormfather. Brandon then identifies Kusasesh as a sapient spren and states that while powerful, it's not on the level of the Stormfather or the Night Watcher. So this may seem like it deflates our theory some, but remember one thing: the Stormfather and the Night Watcher took the places of the spren of the Night and the Wind. Now with Kusasesh, if the spren of the water was splintered long ago, then that would leave the giant spren with just a splinter of that ancient spren's power. In Wind and Truth Interlude 11, we see Kusasesh split open the realms for the Iriali people to go on their 5th journey. This spren opens up perpendicularity. Now that's no small event, and though it's Honor's perpendicularity, the spren is accessing powers usually known to belong to bondsmiths. So yeah, that was a wild ride. Our research for this theory led to a record number of eye-bulging moments, and the more we dive into the ancient spren of Roshar, the more we're convinced that this 4th moon is vastly important, a forgotten god on a critical system of the Cosmere. But what do you think? Was there a 4th god? Was Hoid involved in their destruction? Are the Dawn Shards involved somehow? Let us know what you think of this theory in the comments below. We aren't done talking about the moons of Roshar, so make sure to subscribe if you want to be part of our next Cosmere theories. Until then, Kolo?